Alright, so hello everyone. We're back with Strategy Sunday, Volume 7, this time taking a closer look at Black Widow, and as you see, I kinda changed how the whole presentation looks because I don't know if that's just me, but that white, I was just glaring my eyes. It wasn't nice. Just tell me at the end in the comments if you like this more or the white orange theme I had before. Um, but yeah, then we'll jump right into it. Just at the start, big shout out already to Zero Skater, who this time actually helped me on this. So yeah, we have the unmatched god himself on this. What could go wrong? Let's start with the basic stats. Okay, Black Widow is a ranged fighter with 13 health, move 2, and she has a sidekick with Maria Hill also being ranged with a total health of 6. Being ranged is always just nice. It's just a total upgrade to being melee. Like there's no reason for not being ranged. Um, 13 health is the lowest single hero health we've yet seen in the game, except for Deadpool, and no one considers Deadpool. Um, so Black Widow on paper should be really squishy. Um, she still has Maria who can body block, and she being ranged is also really good. The double range combination we've only seen yet from Yen and Muldoon, I think. All others are like ranged melee, melee ranged, whatever. Double range is just incredibly great for board control, and Maria also having 6 health. That's just kind of basic sidekick health, but Maria is Maria is one of the tankiest sidekicks in the game. Holy macaroni! Um, Total health pool of 19 is just it's just average. Um, the average is 18.9, so I guess we can get that to 19. And yeah, there's no healing in the deck technically. Well, at least for Widow, there's no healing. Maria can sneak some healing in there, but we'll talk about that later. Um, Move 2, of course, is not so great, but double range compensates for that so much. You have so much board control with Widow. Also, with your ability that we'll get to later, you dictate the tempo in almost every single game. So that's totally fine. About consistency, you technically have 15 unique cards in deck, but it feels more like 12. Um, we'll talk about why that is. Why so? Because yeah, technically you have 15 unique ones, but yeah, let's just get to the character ability. Um, it says mission ready. Before drawing your starting hand, add the Moscow Protocol card to your hand. Then shuffle your deck and draw 5 cards. Your starting hand is 6 cards instead of 5. And then we'll just take a quick look over the rules card with the missions. It says when you acquire a new mission, reveal cards from the top of your deck one at a time until you reveal a mission card, a new one. Add that mission card to your hand. Then shuffle the other cards you've revealed back into your deck. If you do not have any missions left in your deck, you do not acquire a new mission. Okay, let's start with the basic ability on the start. Starting with 6 cards instead of 5 is actually a big deal because it always puts the initiative onto you at the start of the game. If you're going first, you can't just double maneuver since you would overdraw. If you're going second, you also probably can't just double maneuver. Your opponent can double maneuver, going from 5 to 7, get a huge distance between you and them, and yeah, then you maneuver once, go up to 7, and then yeah, cool. You'll probably have to discard later on a second maneuver. Um, you technically you have 31 cards, so it your deck doesn't change from this. You don't then just have 24 cards in deck. No, you still have your typical 25 at the start of the game. So that one card, the Moscow Protocol that you have, is kind of extra, so you could just double maneuver and discard it, and that's like you wouldn't you would just be a normal fighter from that point on regarding deck total, but having that extra card is just a great thing as a benefit since you can be able to boost in turn one, really get pressure up or whatever, but it definitely puts you on the initiative at the start of the game. So be aware of that if you're playing against a fighter that wants to be approached a lot. Um, Maybe not so great at the start, but yeah. Then revealing cards from your deck whenever you acquire a new mission. Um, that can be huge knowledge for your opponent. At the start of the game probably less so because there are probably more missions still in your deck, and even if you reveal your whole deck, which happened to me a lot, when I played here on ladder, um, yeah, your opponent kind of knows what's in your hand, but it's the start of the game. That will change very quickly, so it doesn't matter as much. Later in the game, if you're going towards like your last 10 cards, that could be big, big knowledge for your opponent. At that point, you and them are probably a bit lower on the health side, and you're probably already thinking about what is my win condition, um, how do I have lethal if I have so, and them knowing that you maybe don't have a feint in hand could be a huge advantage. So be sure that whenever you play a mission and acquire a new one, um, that there could is not like a big chance that you just get insta killed if your opponent knows, yeah, you don't have a feint in hand. Um, like I said, this matters more later in the games, and it basically just adds a draw one effect to any of your schemes, as long as there is another one in deck. Since you just search for the mission card in your deck, add it to your hand, so you remove the card from the deck into your hand. So it's kind of like a draw one, but you know what you draw in that case. You will definitely draw a new mission, but enough with this mission stuff. Let's just get to the missions because Black Widow's schemes are missions. There are no normal schemes. We'll see this with the Moscow Protocol. This is the one that starts in your hand. Um, it has a boost value of 4. All of these have a boost value of 4, and that's really big deal. And then it says mission. An opposing fighter took damage this turn. And if you complete that and play, draw one card and gain one action. Acquire a new mission. Start the game with this card in your hand. Okay, so first of all, starting with this in your hand is just nice to have. You start with a boost 4, you probably can just boost in and attack your opponent no matter what on the first turn, which is really good. Also, this is just kind of the card to start your mission chain in the game. Since it can only be played if an opposing fighter took damage. Which is like not the hardest condition, but your opponent can definitely play around it, and all of your missions have this kind of condition on the card when you can play them. So it's not like, yeah, I'll just do whatever the scheme says and that's it. No, that's not how her missions work. Um, it can be hard to trigger sometimes because your opponent knows that this is starting in your hand, and if you don't have another mission in your hand, which can happen if you draw 5 cards, you could just draw a second one. Um, you probably only trigger this if you double attack them, because playing this still costs an action. It's not like once you complete that mission on there, it just automatically gets played. No, you still have to play it as an action on your turn. So what that means, if you maneuver up and attack them, maybe you dealt them combat damage with any of your attacks, but then your turn's over, you don't have any more actions, so you can't play this. So it's probably only being able to play it if you have a double attack opportunity. If you attack them first action, dealt damage, then you can play this second action. You will draw a card, gain an action, and then you can attack again. The effect on this is like not so great. Drawing one card is nice to have, I guess. It just replaces the scheme in hand with something different that you probably can play later. Um, and then you just, well, gain an action, which is nice to kind of. You don't lose any value from the scheme. Um, it just replaces the whole action you spend with a new card and a new action. So the card kind of did nothing except for getting you a new mission, and that's the one you want to play this. If you have any other mission in hand at the start of the game, you probably rather play that instead of this to start your chain. Um, but yeah, it's still good to start your chain of missions, and yeah, not so great. Probably the worst of your schemes. Yeah, we'll get to that later. The second one is the Budapest Gambit. Still boost value 4, and it says mission. You have 2 or fewer cards in your hand, and if completed, draw 5 cards. Each opponent discards 1 random card. Acquire a new mission. Okay, huge hand swing here. Draw 5. Holy macaroni. This is probably the swingiest scheme in her deck. Like the other ones are pretty consistent and like you'll just play them and it's like okay, but this card can change games. Um, Getting a good Budapest can sometimes just insta win you a game. Um, what the mission means, if you have 2 or fewer other cards in your hand, once you play this card itself, of course, doesn't count because it's not in your hand when you play it. You draw 5, meaning you will get up to 7. Each opponent discards a random card, which just means their hand just goes 1 down and they don't even know which one this, so you could just discard their best defense. Meaning this creates a 6 card difference between your hand and your opponent's hand if played correctly, which is insane. And then you still require a new mission, which kind of gives you an 8th card. So watch out when you play this. It can lead to you overdrawing and discarding at the end of your turn. Um, but it can be such a huge swing in pressure, in initiative, in tempo. It's insane. Like each opponent, the draw 5 on its own would already be great, but each opponent discarding a random card is just so much better because of it. Because it's great for the value game, which are already good at as Widow. It gives you a good chance to catch them without defense because usually from my experience, you play Budapest when your hands are kind of like same-ish. You just pressure a lot when you know you have this in hand. Your opponent probably also knows you have this in hand, so they are like hesitant to attack you even more. But once you get it, then yeah, well, they discard a random card and could be their only defense. Um, Also, one thing to note: this is your only guaranteed draw in the deck. Um, so be sure if you have to discard this at some point. In some matchups, it's probably not so much needed um, with a draw. However, I say guaranteed since there is a different card in your deck that conditionally draws you cards. Um, but it's like draw 5 is such a huge swing, and you only probably want to play this once per game. But why once per game? It's only a one-off card. Yeah, you can probably guess it. You can recur these. So this is one of them which you like probably play once per game. You get a huge swing, but you have to know when you play it because like if you play this at the wrong time, it could just lose you the game because draw 5 fatigue wise is insane. Like that's kind of like you would take you would take 10 damage with one scheme. Um, so don't play this if you're like at 10 cards in deck later. It forces you so much further into your deck, leading you to fatigue faster. That's not such a big problem at the start because you having such a big hand advantage will lead to you attacking way more often than your opponent, and attacks are technically passes if we're talking fatigue. And your opponent will have to run away a lot more, leading to them double maneuvering when you maneuver and attack. So they're kind of digging deeper into your deck, into their deck, while you're just drawing 1 card per turn. So it will get balanced out throughout time, but if you're only at 5 cards in deck after you played this, yeah, well, you don't have the time anymore to actually compensate that. Your opponent will just run away and they will still be at 7 cards when you're at empty deck or whatever. Um, so just be sure when you what? Just be sure when you want to play this. Um, um, yeah. Otherwise, probably the coolest card in the deck. I just love this card. It can lead to so fun scenarios. And yeah, we'll get to the next one, which is Difference Agenda. It says mission. Black Widow is adjacent to an opposing hero, and if completed, deal 2 damage to each opposing fighter in Black Widow's zone. Acquire a new mission. Okay, so this is just great zone ping potential to deal with multiple fighters. Like, whoo, that's great. Um, 2 damage on its own is already really good, but being able to hit more than one fighter with this is really great if you're playing against someone with a sidekick or even multiple sidekicks. Um, being able to being adjacent to an opposing hero, of course, leaves you open to a double attack opportunity most of the time, since you will probably maneuver up to them and then play this second action. This does not gain an action, so you would just end your turn adjacent to them. Um, Best scenario, of course, is if you're playing against a melee fighter or a ranged fighter and you can force them into adjacency. If they have the initiative, they are approaching you, you could play this first action and second action maneuver away. That's of course the optimal scenario, but in that case, um, they got to position their fighters before you can play this, so they will probably not stick them all around in your zone, so you probably don't get max value with this. So it's kind of a tricky one. Against solo fighters, this works really well. You can just let them approach you, and you play this because, well, you could only hit their hero. That's it. So, like, it's not a big deal. But if you're playing against someone with multis, you will probably have the initiative to actually approach them to actually get good value out of this card. Um, because you always want to hit as many fighters as possible with this, of course. If you can hit both their hero and their sidekick, that's a total of 4 damage you're dealing with one scheme, which is insanely good. If you're hitting multiple 1/2 sidekicks, you're just like 1/2 sidekicks are kind of also like a resource in a game. You can revive them only so many times, and their bodies in the way they can block ways, they can just annoy you, and killing them all with one scheme is also insanely good. So don't just use this on the hero. In some cases, that can work, of course, if you need just the tiny extra bit of damage later in the game. Um, but yeah, if you only hit the opposing hero, you might just want to consider to wait and attack instead, because if you play this, if you could play this, you are adjacent to them, so you could just attack. And maybe you wait a bit longer, still keep the threat of this card in the game, so they still have to position around that. Um, and then maybe play it later once you hit like maybe 2 or 3 fighters with it. Um, but also be aware this only hits fighters in your zone. So that could mean if you're standing next to a hard zone cutoff, you could be adjacent to the opposing hero, but you wouldn't actually deal them damage because you're at a hard cutoff, so they're in a different zone than you are. Um, it happened to me once. I was just like, "Ha, that's cool. Now I can like um, get rid of all Robin Hood's outlaws and deal him too." Yeah, just killed the outlaws, which is still good, I guess, but didn't get damage onto Robin, which actually led to me losing the game. That were the 2 damage that I needed later. Um, but yeah, be aware of that. Hard zone cutoffs kinda can mess with this card, but it's still great zone ping. It's auto damage. You don't complain about auto damage, and this is technically a pass once all missions are played or in your hand. Since it wouldn't acquire a new mission, not leading to you drawing a card from your deck, and just 2 damage, leading to a pass on fatigue, which is really good. Um, we'll get to the next one. It's the Madripoor Sanction. It says mission, Black Widow is in an opponent's starting space. Alright, if completed, deal 2 damage to each of that opponent's fighters. Acquire a new mission. Okay. 2 damage to each opposing fighter is just Holy, that's good. Like that's Firenze on crack, I guess. Um, However, it's way more conditional than Firenze is. Of course, this is not reliant on zones, so it can lead to a whole wipe whenever you play it. If you're playing against Robin Hood and you're in his starting space, yeah, Robin takes two all outlaws at that, no matter where they are, which is insane, insane value. But of course, you have to be in one single space on the whole board. So if your opponent knows you have this in hand, well, they will place some kind of fighter, maybe the hero sidekick, one half sidekick on that space just to block it. And you can't play this anywhere else. So your opponent can just leave one of their fighters there, and bam, you can play this, which can suck at some points. Um, However, it still demands positioning around it, and sometimes it actually can't be avoided. Um, of course, best case scenario is your opponent doesn't know you have this in hand, but they still know it's in deck. So if they are someone like Robin Hood, this is probably their main concern next to Firenze. Um, so they will still position around it, but it can lead to them getting into some bad situations, like maybe um, maybe they'll have to camp with their sidekick on the starting space, leading to the sidekick not being there to block for the hero or annoy you, which could be good. At some point, maybe they'll just say, "Yeah, damn, I just have to go in now. I don't care about the 2 damage," and then you still get to play this. Um, it just kind of forces a playstyle onto the opponent, and that's sometimes really good for you since you can abuse it. Um, Sometimes it can be a bit annoying, but you have 5 of these missions in hand, so your opponent can't position around all of them at the same time mostly, so you kind of always have options. And later in the game, when maybe their one health sidekicks are dead, or their sidekick only is dead, and they only have their hero left, yeah, they can't just camp on their starting space for the whole game since they will have to approach at some point. So don't think that you never get to play this. You do, and when you do, it's insanely satisfying, and it's 2 auto damage. You can't complain about that. Also a pass. So yeah, that's the second pass on the deck. We'll get to the third one now. It's the Kinshasa Directive. Mission: Black Widow is in your starting space. Choose an opponent. They discard 2 cards. Acquire a new mission. Okay, this is just the perfect opener in almost any game. Um, 2 forced discards are just insanely good to get hand advantage. Okay, so if we're taking an example where you are going first, of course you're starting in your starting space, so you can play this first action. Your opponent will have to discard 2 cards, letting them go down to 3 cards. You acquire a new mission, so you're still at 6. Second action, you maneuver, and then you're ending at 7 cards where they have 3. That's insane. That's such a good start. Like, even if you're going second, your opponent could double maneuver and end at 5, and at 7. Then you play this, they go down to 5. You'll end at 7 still, since you maneuver second action, so you still have more cards. This is just, it's just really good. And discarding 2 cards, your opponent loses so much value from this, um, if played correctly, that it's just really good for you. Um, and like being in your own starting space is often way easier than being in an opponent's starting space because, of course, you start there, um, and you still have Maria as a kind of bodyguard. That even if Widow is going in there and attacking, you can just place Maria on your starting space to ensure at some point you can get back there and it's not being camped by an opponent. So that's just really good. And also being able to choose an opponent in maybe free falls or 2v2s is nice to focus out some player. It probably it's like irrelevant for normal competitive unmatch if you're playing one versus one, but it's still a good option you have if you're playing with multiple people together. And yeah, this is also a pass. Discarding two is insane value, and yeah, being able to recur this is it's it's really good. And talking of recursion, we have a really different structure in this video. Like normally I just go with attacks, then versatiles and defense. No, Widow is different. We get to a full value versatile for Maria with a boost value of 3. 3 copies. It's acting director of shield. Um, After combat, move each of your fighters up to 3 spaces. They may move through opposing fighters. Then shuffle 1 scheme from your discard pile into your deck. Okay, so 4 value versatiles are just great. Nothing to complain about it, but usually they don't have so crazy effects. Like you have Exploit, which draws a card, you have Skirmish, which moves 2 spaces, which is it's good, but it's not the craziest thing in the world. Yeah, this versatile just goes, yeah, no. Moving each of your fighters 3 spaces and moving through opposing fighters is really, really good. It helps you so much regarding with your positioning. With your missions, you could just move through their wall of sidekicks, get next to a hero and play Firenze to kind of pop their whole wall, or you could move through them because they're maybe blocking in front of their starting space and then play Mad Report or whatever. This card is so good. It also helps you escape pins if you should ever get pinned as Widow. And just the move 3 and being able to move through opposing fighters would be a really good card. But then you get to shuffle 1 scheme from your discard pile back into your deck. Remember, your schemes are your missions, so this having 3 copies means you technically have 8 missions throughout the whole game. You have your standard 5, and then you can recur 3 additional ones. This is insane. This gets your deck from being a 31 total, because you still have Mascar on top, to being a 34 total deck. That's really good. And knowing which mission to reshuffle at a certain point will win or lose you a game. Because Widow is not a fighter that just has one straight game plan throughout all the matches. She has to decide in every situation what to do with her missions, how is the game going, what is my win condition, and knowing what you get back will decide whether you will win or lose. Technically, this card leads to you getting 6 passes in a deck if you do it right, because you have Firenze, which can be played as a pass if you don't have a mission in deck. You have Madripoor, which can be played as a pass if you don't have a mission in deck, and Kinshasa. With Kinshasa, it's a bit more unlikely since you'll probably want to open with it, but it could happen. And this being able to shuffle one of these 3 back every single time, you could technically get 6 passes with some kind of combination of 2 auto, and 2 discard. And that's just insane value. Like every single one of these scenarios, you could reshuffle 3 times Firenze or 3 times Madripoor, so you get up to 10 auto damage just with schemes. That's Invisible Man like, and that's insane. You could also just reshuffle Kinshasa 3 times, leading to you having 8 scheme discards, and then plus 1 random from Budapest, I guess. But that's 9 discards in that case, and people complained about Medusa having 6. So this is just insane potential, and you will have to think in every situation, which is my win condition, what scheme do I want to get back. Of course, you can only recur those that you already have played, so in some cases it's a bit limited, and your opponent can play around that, maybe pressure Maria if you have no missions in discard, so you maybe get to play one of these suboptimally, but Widow is so good at controlling the tempo of the game that doesn't happen too often. So yeah, now to the question, what to reshuffle? Of course, this will depend on a matchup and situation every single time. It's not like yeah, against that character, you definitely want that. Um, that's most of the time not the case. Against someone like Winter Soldier, yeah, you're not going for fatigue, so you will have to get damage every single time. So yeah, sure, but um, it will vary every single time. Um, but yeah, let's talk about it. I have a small little tier list over here, which isn't a tier list, it's just to showcase what the stuff is used for. If you want to outvalue your opponent, since they won't kill you or fatigue you, you probably want Kinshasa. If you know you have a better fatigue game than them and you just have to survive, um, you can recurse Kinshasa, leading to them discarding in total probably one third of their deck, which is insane value. They won't get to kill you. You can just play fatigue, um, and then you win. If you need some damage, I would recommend Firenze, since it's like way easier to trigger than Mad Rapport. Although that's still a good option. Just with Mad Rapport, your opponent can just camp in their starting space and then you don't get to play it in endgame. But Firenze is just way more versatile to actually get the 2 ping onto their hero. Um, if, however, you are struggling with multiple fighters at the same time, um, more so one half sidekicks, Mad Rapport is probably the better option, um, since your opponent will most of the time just spread their sidekicks so you don't hit too many with Firenze. Um, and if you get Mad Rapport off, yeah, you just kill them no matter where they are. So that's probably the better option. However, since they only have like so many one health sidekicks, if you played the first one of these of Mad Rapport, then yeah, they're already dead. So they can maybe revive 2 of them later. Then you could play a second one on Mad Rapport to still like wipe them again, but then that's it. So Firenze is, just in my opinion, probably the more versatile one of these two. But well, if you need damage, Mad Rapport is still a great option. It's still 2 damage, but so you can't complain. Then, well, Moscow, if you don't have any other option, Moscow is probably the one you want to have. Um, like Moscow, the effect just isn't really great. It's just draw 1 gain action. It just replaces the card, and the card like was for nothing almost. So you probably better boost with it. Um, the only scenario I can see it is like if you have the option between Moscow and Budapest. If you already used Budapest once, yeah, you don't want to use that draw 5 again, probably. Um, so yeah, you probably will recycle Moscow because that you could actually play at some point, and like you still have the 4 boost, so yeah, why not? And it's still better to recur Moscow or Budapest than recurring nothing because it just adds a card to your deck, leading to you having one more maneuver and fatigue. So yeah, I guess if you don't have a better option, go for Moscow. And then if for some reason your first Budapest got discarded maybe by a random discard, um, and you desperately need the draw, if you're getting aggroed down by maybe Bullseye, Raptors, Sindbad, whatever, if your opponent aggresses you so much that you're crumbling, yeah, you can get Budapest back technically and play it. Maybe you could also play it twice a game in some cases if like your opponent just goes hyper draw. I don't know. I have never seen that happen, so I don't know how likely that is, but it could happen. So in that case, Budapest could still be an option, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would just recur Budapest like if you have actually no other option, or if like it got discarded before and you still want to use it early in the game. Yeah, then it's fine, you can get this back instead of some of the others, but maybe you just want to get to Kinshasa instead, making them discard 2, because like you could maybe just not find Budapest until the end, and it's kind of dead card. So yeah, um, Budapest reshuffle is just not a fan of it. I think the ones you recycle the most are Kinshasa, Firenze, and Mad Rapport, depending on what you need in a given situation. And yeah, but now the question is, of course, You need Maria to get these reshuffled, and we've seen Maria has a 4-value versatile 3 times, which is really good. But what is like your other way to keep her alive? Mostly, it's life model decoy. Remember when I said you technically don't have healing in the deck? Well, yeah, you technically do with this. Um, Life Model Decoy is a 0-value defense for Maria with a boost value of 2. You have 2 copies of it, and it says after combat, if Maria Hill was defeated, place her adjacent to Black Widow. If you do, set Maria Hill's health to 3. Okay, so 0-value defenses are usually only effect based, like we've seen Bewilderment preventing all combat damage. But this being able to resurrect Maria is, whoo, that's juicy good. Like in the optimal scenario, of course, you get Maria down to 2 or 1 health, um, with playing directors, blocking well, and yeah, and then your opponent attacks again. Yeah, well, you just defend with this. She will probably get killed since she was at 1 or 2 health, and like if she was at 1 health, there is only like Ryu, Jingobong, which would kill her at that point. So she would get just revived next to Widow with 3 health, which is really good. That's just kind of netting you 1 or 2 health on Maria, and 1 or 2 health on Maria is a lot. She's such a tanky, annoying sidekick. Um, if you can proc this once per game, it will make her so annoying for your opponent since they thought, yeah, now I actually get rid of her. Maybe she only used 2 directors out of 3, so yeah, I'm kind of fine at this point. But no, she resurrects and yay. But there is counterplay to this card. This can be offensive feinted, since you see it's an after combat effect. So if your opponent plays a feint, that effect will be cancelled, and it's just the 2 value. It's just a 0-value defense. So if Maria is at 2 HP or lower, your opponent can offensive feint, and she is guaranteed dead if you play this. Otherwise, you probably play something like your director, and then that got feinted. So at that point, that's a really bad situation for you. So maybe what you want to do is actually keep her at 3 HP to then play this. So even if they offensive feint, you're still at 1 health, so Maria isn't dead. And well, if she doesn't get killed, and she doesn't get killed, so she still sticks around. If she does get killed, she'll get back to 3. So I think 3 health is probably the best point where you want to play this. Um, it kind of guarantees she will be still alive, except if like your opponent has a 3-value feint for some reason that they can attack with. Um, but yeah, probably other best case scenario for this is if you throw this into double attacks, um, and you have hand knowledge. Like that's if there's a double attack coming from Yen, maybe you block the first one with an acting director, and then Maria's at 3 HP. Yeah, you can just block the second one with this. She will die. You know, there's no fancy effect onto it, so it'll just resurrect. And yeah. Mm. Otherwise, one last thing to note: after combat damage is really good against this card. That's especially useful in the little red matchup, since if Maria dies and gets resurrected with this against a Once Upon a Time, the attacking after combat effect will resolve after, so she will take 3 damage after she got resurrected, meaning she's dead, even though she played this card. So be aware of that. If your opponent has like some kind of crazy after combat damage, to be fair, having 3 after combat damage is pretty unlikely. Um, but it could still be with 1 or 2 that Maria could be lower than you think she would be later. And yeah, now I think that was all about Maria and the missions, like most of the time. So we'll get to the actual normal cards. Holy shit, we're already 40 minutes almost into the video. Um, we have Widow's Sting. It's a 5-value attack for Widow only. With a booster, you have two copies. It says after combat, move like Widow up to 3 spaces. Okay, 5-value attacks are already great. 5-value attacks with effects are even better. And you can throw this at ranged. Being able to throw fives at range is just really good. We know Hunter's Eye from Robin Hood's deck, which is already a really good card. Um, but that's just a blank 5. So this is just an all-around upgrade to that card since you also have an effect. And having an effect is most of the time better than having no effect. Um, the movement is really nice to kite with advantage, to position for your schemes or even attack a different fighter in your second action. You can maneuver up to your opponent, attack with this, um, move away again so they can't double attack you. You could, if you attack first action, play this to attack, move up, play something like Firenze, or move back, play Kinshasa or whatever. You could attack maybe their sidekick, kill it, move 3 spaces up. Now you get to their hero and attack them second action. There's so many things you can do with this card. It's just really good positioning wise. And yeah, 5 value attack with such a good effect is really good. Um, but be aware, this is your highest attack in the deck. So Widow isn't a fighter that just outright kills your opponent just with her cards, with her combat cards usually. You only have 2 5s, a couple of 4s. Um, that's still like good cards, but you won't get like big damage onto your opponent. You will often rely on your scheme damage or fatigue to kill them, or maybe if you get a good Budapest, just so much pressure that they get undefended hits. Because if they block everything you throw at them, they will probably not take so much damage, because like your attacks aren't the biggest. Prime scenario, of course, is this getting into a feint. If they for some reason think you play some nasty effect. But yeah, just be aware of that. You can't just play Widow normally where you just, yeah, attack a couple of times and then at some point your opponent is dead. That's not how Widow works. You will really have to rely on your schemes and maybe fatigue later to kill. Next up, we have a 4-value attack for a Widow only. With a boost value of 1, 3 copies, it's Widow's Bite. After combat, if you won the combat, your opponent discards 1 card. Well, remember how I told you about if you recur Kinshasa 3 times, that's a total of 9 discards, one of them being random. Yes, then this card comes along and says, it's actually 12 discards and one of them is random. Holy cow! Even more discard in the deck. Alright, 4-value attacks are already good. We'll probably win combat. The discard effect is just it's just really good. Like having additional discard, even though it's chosen discard isn't like the strongest thing in the world. Um, it's still a card your opponent loses. It's still value that they're not getting, even if it's like a sidekick card from a dead sidekick that they can't use anymore. They could still use it to boost later in the game, so they might not be able to reach you then. Um, Whatever. Winning with a full value attack is pretty likely. Since average block value is 3, you will probably get this triggered like 60% of the time. So you get like 2 to 3 discards per game. If you play it right. It's just a great attack to keep your opponent's hand size low. Um, since Widow hates being pressured, as I said, Budapest is your only reliable draw in the deck and you only have 13 health. So if your opponent can just go full aggro on you and attack every single turn, yeah, you don't like that. You will start to crumble. And this is just really good to keep their hand size low, make them worry, make them run away. Maybe you then also have a low hand size and can play Budapest, leading to them even discarding more and whatever. Just a really good card. And it's often worth to spend on sidekicks to guarantee the effect, since if they don't block their sidekick, or maybe even 1 health sidekick, yeah, they probably don't want to use their good cards in hand. But then they still have to discard 1, since you won the combat, and then they're feeling bad because they could have just defended the sidekick with a good card. But if then you attack with a smaller value with a bait card, then they also feel bad. So this just creates a interesting mind game whenever you go to attack sidekicks, or 1 health sidekicks even, and it just makes your opponent lose even more value out of the deck, leading to you probably having more cards, being able to pressure them more, being able to outlast them since they will have to maneuver a lot more to get back up in hand size, and then you'll get fatigue wins or whatever. Just a really good card. Then next up we have a 1 value attack any with a boost value of 1, 2 copies, it's Fake Out. After combat, if you lost the combat, draw a card and gain 1 action. Alright, so remember when I said Budapest is your only reliable draw that's guaranteed? Yeah, this is your other potential draw. It's like it's really likely to get this draw, but it's not guaranteed. So yeah, 1 value attacks are like they won't deal much damage. They are bait cards and just want to waste some defense out of your opponent. And yeah, this is the perfect bait card. Losing with a 1 value attack is almost guaranteed. Like if your opponent doesn't defend, yeah, you win and deal 1 damage. But if they play any card, even a regroup wins against this. So like the only card you would win against, I think, is actually the Maria Life Model Decoy. I think that's the only 0 value defense that doesn't have anything to do with cancel, ignore, or whatever. And you're probably not playing against yourself. So yeah. If you lose the combat, you waste their defense, you replace this card with another draw, and gain an action so you can attack again. Technically, you could play both of these in 1 turn, so you could maybe attack first action with a 5, with your 5 to maybe if they're playing a movement effect, go after them and still be able to attack. Then you play with it, attack with this. They waste another good card, you draw a card, gain an action. You play another one of these, they again waste the defense, you draw a card, gain an action, then you can finish with maybe your 4. When they don't have defense, you win combat, they still have to discard maybe then their last card in hand, which could be a good attack. And that actually leads to Widow being able to do some scary combos. And like your opponent is always worried about Fake Out because yeah, they know it's in your deck, but they also mostly can't risk to take attacks, at least on their hero, since it could just be your 4 with 1 discard for them, or it could be a print 5, which is big damage. And like I said, since Widow usually doesn't deal that much damage, she is kind of like she wants to deal so much damage with her schemes that if you take 5 from an attack without defending, yeah, that will probably lead to you dying. Since she has so much scheme damage that in the deck that's almost guaranteed. So this will lose combat probably always, since your opponent can't afford to really take attacks. It can just help you to keep up pressure, control the tempo of the game, waste defense. It's like just a really good card. Ideally, you play this right after Budapest to keep attacking and maybe land an undefended hit with your bites instincts. However, it could also be that after Budapest, if they have such a low hand count, and maybe you just discarded their only defense in hand, that they actually have to take, and then you're feeling bad because damn, you could have just thrown a big attack. But yeah, the only thing I want to say that can be bad about this card later in the game, it's maybe not worth to attack with this, since the card draw and action gain is not great for you in Fatigue. Sure, you probably wasted one of their best blocks, and if you then can get an undefended hit, that could still be good for you. But you're spending an action in this case to draw a card and gaining an action. If you would just maneuver, you would just draw the card. So this gives you technically another action after a maneuver, leading to you maybe maneuvering again, and drawing a second card. If you can attack with second action, yeah, it's kind of the same as if you would have maneuvered otherwise, but you can still attack them and waste defenses. So in that case, it's like kind of equally good as a maneuver. So not so great, but well, it's not so bad either. But if you don't have like anything else to attack with, you might just consider not attacking at all. Just note that, and yeah. Otherwise, For most of the game, this is just a really great card. Makes your opponent worry. Is it fake out? Is it not? And yeah. Oops, that was one too far. Next up, we have 4 value versatile for Widow only, with a boost value of 2 copies. It's Widow's Kiss. Immediately. Hydrate homies. Why do I have no water over here? Damn, I'm unprepared. Um, the opposing fighter may not leave their space for the rest of the turn. Alright, so 4 value versatiles are great. They're like max value blocks. This is your highest printed block value, so that's that's already good. That's like already a really good card. Um, However, since this is your highest printed block for Widow, your 13 health can go down really fast if your opponent can keep up pressure. You only have 2 4 blocks in this case, and then everything else is 3 or worse. So that 13 health is, ooh, that's squishy, man. Um, but we've seen you have so many ways to play around that. You have so much discard. You control the tempo of the game most of the time, so it's not like you will just die in every single game. But just note, if you're playing against a fighter that can like keep up draw and still pressure, you can crumble. The effect is nice to set up double attack opportunities or your missions if they are like attacking your first action and then plan to maneuver away on a second one to get away from you, don't get double attacked, and maybe block a starting space, you could play this first action, denying them the movement. So they still have to stay there, so you can on your next turn decide if you want to double attack them or maneuver, get into maybe their starting space to play Matterport, or whatever scheme you want. So the effect is really cool to kind of lock your opponent in place. However, this does not prevent Widow from leaving. So if we maybe have the Tomoe matchup and Tomoe is attacking you with a well, if she's attacking with skirmish will win. But okay, let's say you're playing against Tomoe and you are attacking with this, and she plays a skirmish as a defense. Skirmish will win the combat. She can't move herself, but she can still move Widow, since this only prevents the opposing fighter from leaving. So any effect that says like you can move either fighter, Widow can still be moved out of the way. So it's not like a terrifying war from T-Rex or Golden Bat where you just yeah, the board is locked now, no one can move and no one can do anything about it. Nope, this is just the opposing fighter. But you usually use this on defense to give your opponent less time to react to it. And like I said, this is your highest printed block, and if you only block for 3s throughout the whole game, that might lead to you like going low on health faster than you wanted to. Um, and if you play this on defense, yeah, it leads into your turn, so your opponent can't run away, they're probably near you, and yeah, you have double attack opportunities, or you can play missions however you want. And yeah, just a really good card. Just yeah, know that Widow can still be moved. Next up, Caught in a Web. It's a 3 value versatile for Widow only with a boost value of 3 copies. It's during combat. Cancel all after combat effects on your opponent's card. Okay, so this is a really cool card. I actually really like this. 3 value versatiles are good. It's like average block value. Nothing to complain about that. The effect, however, is really interesting. Canceling after combat effects only is really nice to have. You can probably cancel anything relevant except for like their cards bumping up. If you play this against a shift, yeah, shift will just, it's a during combat effect, it will just get still to a 5, you don't cancel anything. So the best use of this card is if you know, like, if you think they want to get some card draw. Card draw effects tend to be after combat. If you want to deny them movement, movement effects tend to be after combat. Or if they have some kind of auto damage, that also tends to be after combat. So if you play this card right, you technically have another 3 cancels in the deck. And since you have Feint, which we'll get to later, you technically have 6. Um, just be sure when to play this, because it could technically cancel your opponent's effect, but if it doesn't, it's just a blank 3, which is really bad. Um, like it's not okay. It's not really bad, but it's not great. Um, when you use this card, it's really crucial to your game plan. Um, since like denying your opponent draw, movement, or effect-based damage is really important for you in all of the cases. Draw leads to them being able to attack you more often. Movement leads to them kind of controlling what schemes you can play, and damage leads to them, well, dealing damage. You don't want that. Um, if you can actually cancel with all of these, that's insanely good. It will again deny your opponent so much value, and with you having so much discard, that's like technically denying them another 6 cards if you played all of your cancels right. Yeah, you might take a bit damage over it, but I think that's worth most of the time. So yeah, just a really cool card with just canceling the after combat effect. Um, so yeah, nothing really to complain about this. It will obviously in some games be better than in others. But yeah. Next up we have Widow's Line. It's a 3 value versatile for Black Widow only, 2 boost, and 3 copies. It says after combat, move the opposing fighter up to 2 spaces. Again, 3 value versatiles are good, nothing to complain about. Average block value. The effect, however, is really neat, especially in your deck. Being able to move the opposing fighter is really good. Um, if they should be camping a space to deny you a mission, you can just move them away and then claim that space. So ideally, you play this on their turn as a defense. Maybe they attack your second action. They are maybe on their starting space, so well, they know they're safe, their sidekicks are safe. But then you defend with this, move them away, and bam, you can go on the starting space on your turn and kill all of their sidekicks, which is really good. Um, just one thing to note, make sure to not play this, ideally, when you already played Widow's Kiss before, since that prevents the opposing fighter from leaving their space, and this says move the opposing fighter. So you can't just move Widow, you would have to move the opposing fighter, and in that case you can't, since Kiss prevents them from leaving. Um, of course, if you just need some block and this is your only option, yeah, it's better than not blocking, of course. But it's just be just be sure that you maybe, if you plan this, don't play Widow's Kiss before, to prevent them from leaving, since then that would kind of cancel this effect and then you feel kind of bad. All right, so next up, already talked about it, or mentioned it, as I should say. We have Feint. It's a 2 value versatile any, boost value of 1, 3 copies. It's your standard Feint. Immediately cancel all effects on your opponent's card. 2 value versatiles are okay. Not as great as 3s, of course, because it's like lower than average block, but canceling all effects on your opponent's card is really, really good. That can just deny them their big attack, maybe their big reveal, or even fainting the first beast form, or the second one, should I say, is still good to deny that from bumping up. And this brings your total cancels up to 6, which is huge. If you play all of them right, that's 6 effects you can just deny. 6 total cards that are kind of like blank values, and that's just really good. However, like it will be more good in specific matchups than other ones, like against Bigfoot. Well, you're just getting smacked with big values. He doesn't care about your 6 cancels. However, it gives both Maria and Widow the abilities to successfully cancel or value block, which is really good because Caught in a Web is only for Widow. So this being able to cancel for Maria is really good. And that's actually what I would advise you. Try to spare these border points when your opponent actually attacks Maria, since as Widow you also have Caught in a Web to cancel. so you have like a bit more options. Of course, if they are going for that big reveal and it's a during combat effect that you're worried about, you can still play this since Caught in the Web won't cancel that. But it's often more worth to spend these for Maria since, like I said, Widow has just a bit more options. And yeah, like I said, you have with both of them the ability to value block either with Acting Director on Maria or Kiss on Widow, and then you kind of have Feint for both of them. So really good. You'll always love to see Feint in a deck, and just like always with Feint, the usefulness will vary between games, even between matchups. Um, so yeah, but overall, good card. You love to see it. And then I think this is the last card in the deck, if I'm not mistaken. It's Double Identity. It's a 3-value block any 2 boost 3 copies. It says immediately. So many immediately effects on this deck. Holy. Black Widow and Maria Hill may swap spaces. If they do, your other fighter is now the defender. Okay, 3-value blocks are good. It's average block value, nothing to complain about. Being able to swap, however, is really nice, since you can do it after you see what your opponent played. This allows either Widow or Maria to stay alive for way longer than they actually should. Because if your opponent, maybe Widow is at 4 HP, and your opponent is Dracula and they have Beaststorm, so they know, yeah, Beaststorm is lethal no matter what you play. Well, you can swap with this into Maria, so now they're attacking Maria with Beaststorm and they feel bad. You can even, like, if Maria only has 1 HP left, you can still swap into her and maybe tank their big attack or whatever. It just gives both of them so much survivability. You can swap them around however you want after you see the card, which can lead to Maria surviving longer and still being able to play the acting directors, or Widow maybe surviving a big hit. This card is just so versatile. And one other cool thing about this is since you swap spaces, you don't just swap who's the defender, you swap spaces. This can lead to some really cool surprise positioning stuff. If, for example, Maria is standing on your starting space and Widow is somewhere across the board, your opponent attacks Widow, yeah, you can play this, swap Maria, so Maria gets attacked, Widow doesn't take damage, and you can instant play Kinshasa on your turn, which they maybe didn't expect. You can do so many cool positioning things with this. You can even like camp their starting space with Maria, so whenever your opponent attacks either Maria or Widow, they have to be scared about this card, and then just swapping it to Widow and play Mad Rapport first action next turn, which is insane. And there's so many cool things you can do with this card, positioning wise, with your schemes. Um, it's actually really underrated. Like most people just see this as a swap where you can, yeah, at least get some damage between your fighters distributed better. Um, but the positioning stuff you can do with this is so much cooler, in my opinion, actually. That this just, in the hands of a great player, this is a really, really, really good card. Um, yeah, it can also lead, like I said, to you tanking a beast form with 1 HP, which is really funny. But yeah. Then conclusion. Yeah, it was the last card. Black Widow, of course, is a very versatile fighter with many decision points like throughout the game. You have so many missions, you have to plan around them, you have to know which missions you actually want to play, which ones you want to recur. Um, Managing your missions to the fullest extent and keeping Maria alive is crucial for almost any Widow game, since you want Maria alive to get your other missions, you want to use your acting directors, you want to get as much value out of her as possible, also with the revives. And since your game plan is so different in every single game, being able to identify your current win condition is a crucial skill for any Widow player. If you can't identify, yeah, I have lethal if I play both of my last remaining acting directors to get Firenze, because either they faint, take 2 each time, or I get to recur Firenze, leading to 2 damage for each of the schemes, 4 in total, they're dead. Or maybe, yeah, if I now recur Kinshasa, they discard their last 2 cards in hand, and then they can't attack me anymore, and they fatigue or whatever. Um, Being able to identify what do I want to do right now? What will win me the game is the most important thing for any Widow player, in my opinion. Um, she is definitely one of the harder fighters to play just because of that. It's not only the decisions you have to make, but also like just the overall game knowledge to know how to play against which fighter in some cases. Um, but when you manage to get enough experience with her, she can be an absolute beast who almost has a chance into every single matchup, which is really insane. So hopping into the Black Widow card tier list, of course, as always, the placements of these cards can change and depends on the matchups. Um, um, we start in D tier, where no card is actually in. Widow's cards are just insanely consistent. Um, in C tier, we have the Life Model Decoy for Maria. Of course, it's technically great to have the revive, and it definitely makes your opponent think about it, but it can be easily exploited and like countered, that I feel like just the card being in the deck is better than actually playing it most of the time. Still, best use is probably on 3 HP, but in that case, it just kind of nullifies one attack from your opponent, and that's it. Where you also could maybe play a Director and still value block really great, maybe don't take damage and still reshuffle the scheme. It's like you probably get one of these off in a game if you're playing well and have maybe some luck on the interactions. But other than that, it's like you have better cards. In B tier, we have Fake Out. Fake Out is just good overall. The card itself won't do much, but keeping a pressure, getting the draw, gaining the action is just really good. It makes the opponent worry about, is this Fake Out? Should I just take? Or whatever. Caught it in a web is also a really good card. It's 3 value versatiles are already good, but being able to get an additional cancel after combat is just great. Getting up to 6 cancels can deny your opponent so many useful effects. And speaking of denying useful effects, we have Feint. Next to it, it's I kind of view this on these two on the same tier because the one is like a guaranteed cancel, but it's only a 2. The other is a conditional cancel, being a 3. Um, Feint is just an all-around safe option card. Of course, against some matchups, Feint will be an S tier card, and some matchups, Feint will be a D tier card. So I'll just round it down to B tier. Feint is a good card. Nothing you can complain to have it. Then we have your first mission being Moscow. Yeah, Moscow is just, it's there, I guess. You play it to get your action chain and your missions going. But if you have anything else to start that, yeah, you probably don't even play it in most games. Um, except if like want to find a specific scheme um, to maybe you want to find Metaport because you're in their starting space and then you could just kill all of their sidekicks. Yeah, then you could also play Moscow, I guess, to just find a new scheme, a new mission. But other than that, not so great. The other ones are just better. Um, then we have Widow's Line. Being able to move the opposing fighter is really good, messing with their positioning on their turn optimally to then allow you to get your missions. Um, it's just really good. Messing with your opponent's positioning on such a positioning heavy deck is always great. And speaking of messing with positioning, Widow's Kiss denying your opponent movement is already good, but also this being a print 4 block, that's your highest block. It makes Widow actually pretty tanky. Combined with the next one, Double Identity, um, the swaps you can do with that, the positioning you can do with that, it's insanely great. It can just keep one of your fighters alive way longer than they should, and it just makes Widow way more tanky than she should be, to be honest, with 13 health. Um, Yeah, then we'll get to the next schemes. Madripoor, 2 damage to everyone is insanely good, but of course it's very conditional in this case. You maybe get to play 1 or 2 per game, probably. And otherwise it's just 2 other damage, you can't complain about that. Same with Firenze later. Firenze is just a bit like more reliable. You can play it probably more often, but you won't hit as many fighters with it. But still, 2 auto damage is still 2 auto damage. It's really good. In some other decks, a 2 auto damage scheme would be an S tier card. For Widow, I think it's top of A tier. You could argue about S tier um, because it's just so versatile and so good. But I think there are some even better cards. Um, One of them in S tier now being Widow's Sting, print 5. You can't complain about a print 5, and you also have movement onto it. Like I said, again, being able to position kite with advantage, whatever, you can do so many cool things with this card, and you don't complain about a print 5. And then Widow's Bite, also really good. Additional discard is insanely great, especially in a deck that already has so much discard. And print 4 attack, you don't complain about that. Acting Director is the card that just holds your deck together, kinda. Getting your schemes recurred with your missions, it's insanely good. This is the card that will win you games if you know what to recur, and your opponent always has to think about it and wants to kill Maria ASAP just because of this one card. And then the last two cards, Kinshasa. Kinshasa is probably the best opener in all of Unmatched. That's the best thing you can do. It's probably, in my opinion, even better than Houdini's boost at stage. I think just getting this huge 4 card hand advantage at the end of your turn, it's insane. Um, and later in the game, being able to discard your opponent 8 cards total if you recur 3 of these, it's so much value you deny them. Um, just great card, and the positioning is not that conditional since being able to go to your starting space is like more likely than any of the other ones probably. And yeah, great card. And then S tier, the best card in her deck, if you know how to use it right, it's Budapest in my opinion. Knowing when to get this huge hand lead, when to actually pressure them down, get undefended hits, make them worry so much that they run for their lives. It's this card. It's so insanely good. I love it. But if you don't know when exactly to play a Budapest, it's probably more so A or B tier. I want to say that. Yeah, going into the matchups. Of course, this tier list is only based on personal experiences, so feel free to disagree in the comments. And big thanks to Zero Skater 12 for helping me make this as accurate as possible. Um, Widow, as you see, is not a fighter that has like many bad or many really easy matchups. Widow is just so versatile that she has a chance into almost everyone, but it's like not that she wins by a landslide. Well, start with Don't Try It here. Ghost Rider. Oh boy. Ghost Rider can. Ghost Rider just he rooms through you, deals you chip damage every single time. You don't have any big burst damage to punish him for that. And then Blaze can take the almost one-shot Maria and you don't get value or whatever. Ghost Rider is just a nightmare for you. Same with Bigfoot. Bigfoot just hits way too hard over your defenses. You just die. Um, She-Hulk just outvalues you and random discards and 9 value attacks. Woo. It's She-Hulk. It's abysmal, and also you don't have enough damage to actually get rid of her 24 health if she uses both healing. Um, then slightly bad, we have Bullseye, which is actually interesting. He can just pressure you so much from range with his ability being able to attack from 5 spaces away. Um, of course, he's reliant on his scheme draw, but if he gets it, he can pressure you so much. I think Bullseye is one of the characters that just completely ignores Maria and just goes for a Widow, because you could just get stuck with a handful of schemes and Maria cards at some point. Then slightly bad as well, we have Elektra and Sherlock. Um, I think Widow has more so a chance against Sherlock than Elektra. She can actually do decently well against Sherlock. Elektra just does Elektra things, of course. Um, then Yen is also like slightly bad. You have your schemes to get huge value against her archers, of course, but a good Yen player will position around that. She can combo Maria to death, technically, although you have Director to escape that. Um, well, yeah, Yen can outvalue you very easily because she technically also has 3 double attacks, 2 shields, and 2 pin of praise. She also has 7 discards, if you want to tell it like that. And yeah, then T-Rex will just aggro you down, um, kill you before you actually get to play all of your stuff. However, you still have a chance in that because of Budapest, in my opinion, and Maria being in the way and being so tanky. And then we have a ton of even matchups. I won't go over every single one of them. They are just all really dependent on which schemes do you recur, what is the game state, how is the game going, and they are all really even. It's really cool, and yeah. Then the ones that are actually favored, for you a bit, Alice, which you can kind of kill before she can kill you, which is funny, and since Alice, if she is big, can't really defend for more than three, except if she has skirmish in hand or wants to play a defensive maxim, I guess. Your discard on Widow's Bite is also guaranteed, which is really good. Um, then we have someone like Moon Knight, which is relevant. You can outvalue him, which is cool. Of course, Contra doesn't take damage from your schemes, but you can play around that. Um, Achilles, you can fatigue Achilles if you're on a big enough map. Of course, if you're on Raptor Paddock, that probably won't work. But Widow can be so tanky that she can actually survive even Angry Achilles at some point, and then still win that, and then almost free win. Well, we have the typical low tier ones with the Buffy set and stuff, but the actual notable ones, Daredevil, you have way too much discard for Daredevil. You will just die and discard all of his devils. It's insane. And you can even pressure him down so much with all your discard with Budapest, since he has no card draw, he will just crumble. And Mary, of course, Mary hates discard because she wants to play low hand count. And yeah, playing Budapest against low hand count made Mary is a war crime in my opinion. It's really funny, but yeah. And lastly, coming to Widow's maps. Widow usually likes bigger maps with the possibilities to hide Maria effectively because she wants to get as much value out of her as she can. She wants to control the tempo, um, control the map, and then get as much value out of her cards and make your opponent waste cards. However, um, she isn't really map dependent in any way. Since she rather go first or second depending on the matchup, since you want to have that big hand advantage lead at the start with playing a Kinshasa and then going in with 7 cards into their 3 to really control the tempo at the start. If you're going second, your opponent can just double maneuver away. You have to probably waste stuff. It's not great for you. You want to make use of that 31 cards you have as much as possible with that 6 card starting hand with that advantage that you have. You want to make use of that. So, and you don't have like any effects that require so many stuff regarding the map, like adjacency. Yeah, you have Firenze, but that's also kind of it. You're ranged, so you're really versatile. You don't really need small maps. You don't really need anything. Actually, Widow's just so versatile. She can work almost everywhere. And yeah, she'd rather go first or second. And yeah, since she's ranged and has low health with no healing, like I said, smaller maps or anti-ranged maps where she has to engage in combat a bit too often herself tend to be bad. You don't like to be aggroed down as Widow, your defenses aren't the best. You have the swap, but then Maria's taking damage, which you also don't like since you're not getting full value out of her at some point. Um, so you want to have a bit of freedom regarding the map. Um, so something like Raptor Paddock is probably not the best thing for you. But other than that, she's just versatile. She can function almost everywhere. But if I had to pick top 3 maps, it would be number 1 Soho. Soho is just really good with that beautiful Robin spot in the center, being able to attack almost everywhere where you want with a single maneuver. Um, Also, you have the rooftops where you could hide Maria against melee matchups, and it's just a really good map for you. Sherwood is, of course, a really good map for Rage in total, and you have that wonderful green area on top where you can also hide Maria, and then, of course, King Solomon's Mine. Um, you have also that sweet spot on the top left where you can hide Maria against melee. You have all of these secret passages that you can make use of to even get more surprise stuff with your missions. And yeah, but other than that, like I said, Widow is really map dependent. And yeah, that concludes this episode of Strategy Sunday. I think this will, yeah, it is definitely the longest one yet. Shout out again to Zero Skater for actually helping me getting a bit more familiar with Black Widow. Her game plan, matchups, and maps, but mostly matchups and maps. I've played her a lot in recent time, and I absolutely love her. If you've seen my tier list, how much I like the different characters, you know she is in S tier for me. I really love her. I'm playing her so much right now and getting better and better. It's really cool to actually have all of these decision points. And big thanks again to Zero for actually um, just concluding my knowledge in that way. Um, Feel free to write feedbacks or questions in the comments, and please tell me which character you also want me to cover next. I've seen a request for Daredevil in one of the last videos, which I will definitely do after I did Oda, as we'll see later, um, because Daredevil is also one of my favorites. And just tell me if you have any other wishes, what I should do. Um, just write them in the comments and please tell me whether you like this design or the old one more. I think this is just way nicer to look at and just feels better. I don't know. But I could also see if you want the old one back. And yeah, planned are for next week, GL Trend, and then after that I want to take a look at Oda. And then yeah, probably something like Daredevil because it was suggested. And yeah, until next time.